This is Verneer for card runners, and I'm going to be making a 25 no limit video on full tilt poker. One of the really good things about full tilt poker is this ability to data mine. So before I start playing, I'm going to open up in Poker Tracker. I created a new database using the maintain database function, and it's called 25NL data mine. So I've got a bunch of different levels, um, which I data mine. And this one I'm using specifically for 25 no limit. So it doesn't get bogged down with a lot of the other limits, and I can keep things separate and segregated. So once I do that, I'm going to um, open the 25 NL data mine, and I have the software called Idle Miner. And let me tell a little bit about Idle Miner. For Idle Miner, I can figure out what limit I want to do. So here I want to do no limit, cash games, 6 max. And since I'm going to be data mining 25 no limit, I'm going to go to 1025. And I'm going to select up. I want to look at tables which have a minimum of 5 players. Now I'm going to log in into Full Tilt, and I'm going to make sure that these tables are open. And I'm just going to let it run. Now, the advantage of using a software like Idle Miner is that if a table goes to 0 players, it's just going to close that table out and open another table up. So if a table drops to 4 or 3 players, then it's going to do the same thing. It's going to close that table up, and it's going to open another table up. So when I'm at school, I just let this run for 8 to 9 hours, and it collects a lot of data, and it collects it into this 25 NL data mine that I have. So I'm going to start it, and I'm going to come back in a few minutes, or I'm going to come back in about 30 minutes and be ready to play my tables. Anytime I sit down to play poker, my main concern is how do I make the most amount of money playing the limit that I'm going to be playing on the site that I'm going to be playing. And I think the optimal way to make the most amount of money per hour at 25 no limit on full tilt is to play a pretty low VPIP between 15 and 20. And to adjust for that, I'm going to play more tables. So I'm going to start with 4 tables. And if you're not comfortable with 4 tables, start with 2 tables and move up to like 6 or 8 as you get comfortable. But four is a good number to be playing. The majority of our profits are going to come at showdown, so we're going to be raising quality hands. We have a set range from under the gun and middle position, and we're going to stick with that regardless of the table. And we're going to adjust our cutoff opening range based on the button. If the button is very loose, then we're going to be tightening up. And if the button's pretty tight, then we're going to be opening up a wider range from the cutoff. And the same is true for the button, except we're going to be looking at the blinds. If the blinds are very tight, then we're going to be opening up more from the button. And if the blinds are very loose, then we're going to be opening up a lot less from the button. So that's the general plan for this session. Now let's hit some tables. All right, now we've got some tables open. So we're going to wait around for the blinds to come around, and we're going to start playing. So one of the big differences between 25 no limit and something like 200 no limit is that more often than not, you're just going to have quality hands when you go down to showdown. People are going to be calling you down very, very light. They're going to be calling you down with gutters. They're going to be calling you down with top pair. And often when they miss on the river, they're going to be bluffing. And you're just going to have hands which stand that kind of play. So often you'll need top pair, and other people are going to be also calling you down with top pairs. So if we're raising quality hands like ace queen and ace jack, and we hit an ace or a jack, or I mean a queen or a jack, then we're going to be getting called by a lot of people that um, are calling us with a queen or a jack, but have a worse kicker. So we're going to be able to get paid off. So our range for under the gun, and middle position, which is under the gun +1, is going to be very, very set because we don't want to play. Very often we're going to get called, and we're going to have to play a hand out of position, and it's going to be very, very tough. So we're going to make sure that we have very good hands when we do this. Here, I'm not even going to look him up for 25 cents. There's no money in the pot. He could have a jack. He could have an ace. He could be chopping with me. I don't really care that much. So while I think this guy is definitely capable of raising to isolate, he's playing 30-15. We have no history, so he doesn't know if I'm a solid player or if I'm a bad player. So I'm not going to try to re-steal. I'm going to try to stick to basic ABC poker for now. And then as the session goes along, this might be a situation where I re-raise him. But for now, I'm going to assume that he has a hand and play it accordingly. So here I'm called by a fairly tight player in the blinds. So his call could mean that he's got a pocket pair. More often than not, when a player this tight flat calls out of the blinds, they've got a small pocket pair. I would say between 2 and 9. And on a flop like that, he's just going to be giving those up. Here I have a suited ace, which is in my button opening range if it's slumped around to me. But now the player, I'm just going to pop him up to isolate and play it accordingly. All right, here a pretty standard player opened the button and I called with fives. And the flop is not that bad, so I'm going to check call a bet on this flop. My fives might be ahead. Now, I'm pretty sure my fives are ahead, so I'm going to bet to protect my hand. I've got 2 pair. And here I'm going to, I don't think he has a queen. Um, I don't think he might have a pocket pair himself, but he might have picked up a flush draw. So now I picked up a flush draw along with my gutter and 2 overs, and he leads into me. I'm not really sure what that means, but I'm not ready to give up on the hand just yet, so I'm going to call. And now the board is double paired, and he's given me really, really good odds. Ace high might be good here. If he's value betting a 5 or a 4, more power to him. But I think, given the odds that he's given me, I think ace high is going to be good enough often here. So I had a lot of outs given his range on the turn, and I think calling was certainly correct. On the river, it was really, really close. But like I said, I felt like my ace high was going to be good there off enough to make it profitable. Here I've got a solid player who raises into me. I've got pocket queens, and I'm going to repop him for value and play it for stacks if he shoves. One of the things to pay attention to are the timing tells that you give off. Now, this kind of a flop, either way ahead or way behind. If he has a hand like ace-king, he's certainly not folding it. And he could have pocket tens, he could have jacks, even ace-queen hits the nuts. So I don't think there's any value in betting. And by checking, my hand becomes underrepresented, and I'm checking for pot control, and I'm checking to get value, potentially out of weaker hands. So if he checks now, I think I'm going to check again. And if there's any value to be gotten, I'll get it on the river. But this is just not a hand that can stand a check raise. And I'm just not afraid of getting drawn out by anything. I have no idea what he's calling me with. I think he's calling me with a hand like I'm gonna bet very, 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 very thin here. He might be betting. He might be calling me with like nines or just like a random ace rag. But because I can't stand a check raise on the flop, and I have legitimate overs, or I mean I have legitimate outs, then I'm going to be playing it more. Um, I'm gonna slow it down. I think there's a lot of value in that. Now I have a limper out of position, and then I have a flat caller, and then I've got somebody who's raising, and I'm actually gonna re-raise to isolate here because I think I have a good enough hand. Um, Let me think. I re-raised the last hand. Um, so because I re-raised the last hand, I'm just gonna flat call with this one, and I'm gonna play it. I'm gonna play my hand a little bit slowly. Here I'm gonna three bet, and I'm gonna talk about uh, what goes into making a three bet, and why I think this is a situation where three betting is correct. So this guy's playing really loose. Um, I'm gonna call here. I've got top pair, but I'm gonna play this hand very passively with my top pair. So this guy's playing really loose, and I haven't done anything to get out of line. So there's no reason to believe that I'm three betting him light. And because I haven't gotten out of line, then I think that he's going to give me credit for a lot more. Now here, uh, I just three bet the last hand, and now this guy's raising me big out of the blinds. Um, I'm gonna play my jacks. I'm gonna play them actually pretty quickly. So I'm definitely willing to take a flip, and I'm definitely willing to get it in when it's three-handed. There's reasons for flat because too many cards can come on the flop, which kill my action. So any kind of queen, any kind of king, any kind of ace, and I have no idea where I stand. So I would much rather just try to take it down. Now, because I've been so active on the last two hands, I three bet this guy, I four bet this guy. This is a hand that I would definitely be raising to isolate, but because I've been so active, I'm going to slow down a little bit and I'm going to fold it. I can limp along and try to encourage a lot of other people to limp, but I'm just going to let it go. Normally, I would definitely be raising this hand to isolate. So I'm going to make a note on this guy that this is the guy that I had the king queen against. So isolates with 5-5, c bets once, in position, calls down, or I should say gives up. So he's the kind of player that's going to allow me to get to showdown. And he's the kind of player that's going to be pretty easy to play. So because we have a set range for under the gun and middle position, and this is in our range, we're just going to let it go. And jacks are definitely a premium hand under the gun. Now, I was going to say, I think if this guy re-raises me, I was going to fold it. Because I'm raising under the gun, I've got to give him credit for a hand. And I'm not going to continuation bet this flop into three other people with two overcards. So unless I improve rapidly on the turn, I guess given a jack, I have some showdown value. I don't think anybody's going to be betting a queen here. If they're betting a queen, that's pretty ambitious. Somebody might bet out with a king, but more than likely, if it goes checked around, then I don't think anybody has a king or a queen. And I'm going to call once for the dollar. This is the guy that bet with the pocket sevens. And I think it's gonna let me get a shutdown. So I think he might have some like Queen Jack or like King Jack here. Actually, um, Queen Nine. So he's betting very very thin. And because this blind is very very tight, I'm gonna open up my cutoff range and I'm gonna add like suited kings to it, which I think is gonna let me. I think I'm gonna be able to get folds often enough to make that profitable. And I hit a flush draw with an ace on there. I think this guy's calling out of the blinds with. I think a tight player like that is going to be calling out of the blinds with pocket pairs more often than not. So anytime I have an ace high flop, I'm gonna be in good shape, and I'm gonna be able to take it down with a continuation bet. Um, Blocker bets small with pairs. So now my image is pretty bad at this table. Well, I mean, I showed down jacks, but I played it pretty passively. But I'm still going to tighten up. I'm playing 30, 36, 36 at this table. So I'm going to try to avoid situations where I have a hand like 8-6, and it's a very obvious raise from the button, just due to position. So I'm going to try to play quality hands on this table for the next few orbits. And then when my image becomes a little bit better, then I'm gonna uh, I should say my perceived image, just my image of playing very very loose and very very aggressive pre-flop. This guy posts out of position, and we have an under the gun raise. If if I had some limpers, I would repop him. But this guy's only raising 8% of his hands, so he's playing 19-8. So he seems like a reasonable player. And while he could certainly be trying to steal here, I think his just general under the gun opening range has ace jack crushed. So I'm gonna let it go. I flopped. Um, I flopped middle pair here. There's too much of a chance that he's limping like some kind of a ace rag, but now I'm just gonna bet and try to take it down. Um, that's a very good card for me. I'm going to try to get value out of like he could have checked maybe try to get value out of a jack or maybe try to get value out of if he checked an ace behind on the flop. So I'm gonna bet $1.25 and hope to get looked up by whatever he has. I think if he has a flush draw, he's folding, but now he raises me. I'm trying to think of what he could have. I mean, if he called me with Queen 10 and just got a, I think there's a lot of other two pair combinations. If he has aces up, then I'm beat, but I think I'm ahead of enough hands to where calling here is okay. So he hit a gutter on me, but I think I'm ahead of enough other two pair combinations, like uh, like with a jack to to make that raise to make that call profitable in the long run. All right. This I think given the last hand, this is a board that I'm gonna double barrel on, just because the player. Well, now that the flush draw hits, Here I flopped top pair and I'm check raised all in. I think with all the draws out there, he could have so many more hands other than a king that I'm gonna call. Um, and this completes a lot of draws, and I'm just gonna give up on the hand. So if the turn was a blank, I was gonna double barrel, but as played, I'm just gonna fold it. And I'm gonna fold my 6-7. So right now, through about 80 hands, we're playing 15-13, which is a lot tighter than I would like, but that just seems to be the product of our hands. So here it costs us 25 cents to play a pot of uh, over $1.50. So we're getting really, really, really good odds to play this. So even though this is a bad hand, the implied odds alone, I think, merit the call. So when we make that call, we're pretty much looking to hit trips, two pair, or some kind of a straight. And when we don't, we're just going to check fold. Um, Here I hit a flush draw, and I'm gonna call this this one time. I also have a backdoor straight draw, and now if I'm faced with another quarter bet, I'll call again. But if I'm faced with a bigger bet, I'm just gonna fold. And I think one of them has like an 8, and one of them has maybe a queen, but I'm not gonna continue with the hand. Here I haven't been getting out of line, so I'm gonna raise on the button with suited cards which are fairly connected. And ace high flop, and I've got the flush draw, so I'm going to continuation bet it for a couple of reasons. One of them is to build a pot in case I do hit the flush, but mainly it's just a good board to continuation bet on. Anytime there's an ace high board, it's probably a good board to continuation bet on. And here I've been playing really, really tight. I've been playing 15-11 at this table, so I'm going to open up my button raising range. And this guy's playing pretty tight, and this guy seems to be playing, um, well, I mean, he limped with the 8-2, but he doesn't seem like a player that's going to be 3-betting me a lot. And now I'm going to lead pretty strong on this flop, and unless he has a king, it's going to be very hard for him to continue. So I think I'm going to be able to take down the flop. I think I'm going to be able to take down the pot often enough to make that profitable. Now he calls me. I'm just going to be done with the hand. I'm going to give him credit for a king, and I'm just going to fold it. Um, he could certainly have a draw, but I'm not going to try to push him off the draw. He could have a 10, and I'm not going to try to push him off the 10 either. So now we pick up two quality hands on two tables. This one I'm going to be 3-betting, and this one I'm going to be raising. Now this guy's playing 2014, and he insta-mucks. And if OE was to shove here with my 10s, now super drivey board, very, very connected. I didn't catch any piece of it, so I'm not even going to continuation bet into two people. I think I'm going to get called by a really wide range. I'm going to get called by um, a lot of aces, a lot of uh, like aces, straights, any kind of flush draw. So um, here, 6-5 suited, it's going to be in my cutoff opening range, so I'm going to pop it up. And that's a very good flop for me. I'm going to be going all the way with this flop. It's just a matter of how do I get the money in. I do want to bet because I think I'm going to get action out of a lot of hands, and I always want to be betting. Here I have some showdown value. I think I'm going to call. I'm going to call this, and I think I'm going to lead because I think my kicker's going to be like if he has an ace, he's certainly going to call or raise me. But I think if he has a seven or a flush draw, he's going to just continue. And actually, I think we're chopping now. But I'm going to do like a little blocker bet. Well, I think I think I'm gonna check call. Well, it just depends how much he bets. I'm gonna see how much he bets. I think he'll call me on the turn with a really wide range. He's thinking a lot, which makes me think he has a good hand. I think if he was gonna bluff, he would have already bluffed. So I think he has an ace. Um, if he was gonna bluff, I think he would have been a lot quicker about his bet. I think he would have just like insta bet. But he thought for a while, and I think when he did that, he's trying to figure out how much to bet. The fact that he bet pot, um, that makes me. I think if he had a really strong hand, I think he would have bet a little bit less. But uh, because of the timing tell, I think I'm going to fold. So he thought for a while, and he probably, I guess he's trying to think about, you know, do I have an ace? What can he get value out of? And he decided to bet pot. So I guess he put me on a decent hand, and decided that that's how much value he's gonna get. All right. I'm I'm three bet from the button. I've got jacks. My image is certainly solid. I could four bet in this situation, but I'm just gonna elect to call. And I'm going to check call this flop. There's definitely values in he bets pot pretty quickly. Um, I think check raising here. If I check raise, I'm gonna get called by queens, kings, and aces. He bet pretty quickly and he bet pot. Somebody says they have a nine. Um, I think he's gonna slow down with a lot of hands. If he bets again here, I'm definitely beat. But the standard line for that kind of situation is to um, check call. Um, Now I'm trying to think. Um, I think the way he bet the flop so quickly and checked the turn so quickly makes me think he's got ace king. I don't think there's any value in betting here. Now, if he bets, then I'm in a pickle. I think if he had queens full, then I don't think he would have checked behind on the turn so quickly. So now I actually think that more often than not he has ace king, and I could certainly have much better. He could certainly have. Um, I don't think he has queens full. He might have kings or aces and be trying to get some value, but I think more often than not he's gonna have ace king, and my check, me showing weakness three times, he's just gonna try to buy it. So based on how the hand progressed, we could kind of reason out. Um, we could kind of we could kind of reason out what he had. Now, like I said, the general line for jacks against an unknown, um, if it's small blind, you know, if I'm raising the button, the reason if I'm raising the button and I'm three bet, then three handed, I'm willing to go with jacks. If I'm raising from the cutoff and it's four handed, it's a lot more likely that he's gonna have a better hand. And he's an unknown, so he has no reason to believe that, um, or I have no reason to believe that he's three betting me light. And I'm playing really tight at this table. I don't know if he's aware of my table image, But the way he raised me so quickly led me to believe that he did have a good hand. So the range of hands that he has there is um, queens. Well, he could have jacks, but usually it's queens through aces and ace king. And um, when he bet the flop so quickly, that range doesn't change. But it's a good flop for me. It's two nines and a two. So I'm not ready to give up on the hand just yet because he could have ace king. So I like to call. If I raise there, then all the hands that have me crushed um, call, and all the hands that I'm ahead of fold. So the turn brings a queen, and it goes check check really quickly. So there's no so now I can rule out pocket queens because I think if he had pocket queens, then he would think about it a lot more. He now he just made queens full, and um, and he's going to be thinking about how to bet. Now here my image is pretty good at this table, and this guy is really loose. So I just played my jacks very passively, and I think he's going to be giving me credit. Um, so that's a good flop for me. I'm going to uh, I'm going to do. There's no draws, so I actually think I'm gonna take a little bit more passive line. I think I have the deck crushed, and I mean that's actually the only hand that I was kind of afraid of, but I I think I do have to bet now. Um, so I can certainly continuation bet on that flop, but it's just such a dry board that I think I can induce a lot more action by just checking. So once the ace hits, it's it's not a good card for my actual hand, but it's a fantastic card for my perceived hand. So now there's really no value in sloping anymore. So I can just go ahead and bet. And now if he raises me on the turn, then I'm absolutely crushed. Um, but I felt that by checking this flop, I could induce a lot more action on later streets. So if he's calling me with pocket nines, and I check this flop, and the turn is like a three, and then I bet, then he's a lot more likely to put me on a hand like ace king, where I check the flop out of fear, and now I'm trying to steal it. So I will actually get more value out of hands like, eight, well, like um, fours through jacks by checking that flop. The reason for oh my god, that's just that's a really ugly board. In fact, I think for pocket kings, actually for pocket aces, that's the worst possible board. But I think I'm gonna play it fast. There is a lot of hands that he could have that I'm ahead of. Actually, ooh, I don't know if he raises me here. That's so nasty. Um, hmm. Um, I'm calling over here just because of the implied odds. I'm trying to think of what he could has. I mean, anything that he has other than 10 jack just came on the turn. He bets 15 bucks. Um, pretty much putting me all in. I think he could have a flush. Um, he could have a flush. He could have like something like queen jack. I think queen jack would raise me on the flop. He could have a queen, something like king queen, uh, ace queen. I don't know what he's limping with, but I think he's most likely holding here is a flush. So I'm just gonna let it go. If he bluffed me, more power to him. But it's just I just don't beat anything other than a bluff on that board. So I would rather not try to make a hero call against an unknown when the board just absolutely goes to crap on me. So this player is a solid player, and I showed down a good hand against him, and he's raising under the gun. So I'm gonna re-raise my ace queen for value, and if he comes over the top, I'm gonna fold. Um, but I think I'm ahead of his range. Now he called me. I don't know what it means. It could mean that he he could be slow playing a big pocket pair, or he could be calling for set value. But I don't think I'm gonna try to isolate. Actually, um, I think it's gonna be profitable enough to bet here, where he's gonna be folding often enough for me to get heads up with the other player. So initially, I was thinking that he might be slow playing a bit pocket pair, but I actually decided that that's less likely the case since he checked to me. I think it would be a lot more likely to raise me pre-flop, and I I do want to go heads up against the other player, so that's why I chose to, that's why I changed my mind and decided to bet to isolate. Now here I've got the third nut flush on a paired board. I don't think there's any value in betting. All right, I'm gonna wrap up this video. I'm gonna finish up the blinds, and then I'm gonna do some poker tracker analysis. So now at the end of the session, it's always good to review your poker tracker numbers and look at the big hands you won and the big hands you lost and try to figure out whether you should have played the hands differently. So I ended up playing 17-14, which was kind of how I expected to be playing, and I ended up down about $3. My attempt to steal blinds was around 30%. I would like it to be closer to 35, but I mean, it is what it is for the session. And my one money at showdown was very, very low. It should be around 50 or so, but a lot of that might have to do with just the cards that I was dealt. So now let's look at let's look at the positional stats. I played about 10% of hands under the gun, which is kind of what I want to be playing. And I played only about 3% of the hands from the cutoff, or under the gun +1. So not the cutoff, under the gun +1. I did open King Jack suited. That's usually not in my under the gun +1 opening range, but I opened it one time. And other than that, there's just no good hands for me to open. So a lot of that is just variance. Now on the button, I usually want to be playing a lot more hands. So I usually want to be playing around 30% of the hands. Um, or my VPIP, my long-term VPIP on the button should be closer to 30. But with only 34 hands, that's just such a small sample size. So it just doesn't look like we were dealt a lot of quality hands. So that's just variance. Now let's go to game notes and get all the hands and look at some of the biggest winners and the biggest losers we had. So the biggest winner was a hand that we played with pocket jacks, where there's a lot of timing tells that went on this hand. We raise, um, we raise from the cutoff, and we're insta raised by the button, uh, and we have no notes on the button. So we're not ready to give this hand up. If we raise under the gun and somebody re-raises us, there's times when I would fold jacks pre-flop, but here we just don't know. And more often than not, we're going to be up against ace king. So our plan is to check, call a low flop, and try to get to showdown. More often than not, if people are check called, they're not going to second barrel in this level. So that's our plan. That's exactly the kind of flop we're looking for. And the villain fires pot right off the bat, fires pot quickly. So we're going to stick with our original plan of calling once and seeing what the turn brings. The turn brings a queen. Now, he could certainly be repopping us with ace queen too. So ace queen just got there. We're still ahead of ace king, and we're really behind queens and aces and kings. But the turn play goes check check really quickly. He checks the turn really quickly. So now the river is a safe card, and we check again. So we've shown nothing but weakness 3 times, and he fires $10, which to me it doesn't look like a value bet. I think if he had aces or kings, he would fire again on the turn. I think if he had queens, he would think a lot more on the turn before. I don't think he would insta check the turn with a full house because he would think about what is he putting me on and how to get the most money out of me. So this to me just looked like he's trying to steal with ace king. I think if he had ace queen and he hit the queen on the turn, I think he would have thought about it a lot longer too. So the quick turn check and then the hesitation bluff on the river made me think he had ace king, and I made the call. Now our biggest losers included, our biggest loser was the hand with ace 8 suited on the button, where we have a limper, we isolate the limper, and there's a low flop, low safe flop. He checks. I do a standard continuation bet. He calls. The turn brings us a flush draw, a non-nuts straight draw, and we still have 2 overcards. So if we actually know that he has something like sevens, um, if he has, um, I'm I'm a dog in the hand, but I think that he bets something like $3 into $9 or $3 and $8. So I feel like I have enough outs to merit a call. So I call, and the river is another 4. So now it's a double paired board, and now he bets 350 into 14. So I find that I see air here so often that I think there's some value in ace high. So I'm getting the pot after his bet is around $18, and it cost me $3. So I'm getting something like 6-1 on my money. So as long as I'm right, 16% of the time um, or more, then the call is correct. And I think ace high is actually ahead of enough of the range here to where calling here is really not that bad. Now, um, let me see what this hand was. Okay, so here I flopped top pair. Uh, here I flopped top pair against the short stack, and all the money went in. So that's pretty standard. If I'm going to be raising hand like king 3 suited and I'm going to be hitting top pair, I'm not going to be folding it to a short stack who just happen to have a set there. I'll just see so many hands there that it's going to be profitable for me to play this. I'll see flush draws, straight draws, etc. So now we have a limper. We have a raise from the button. I make a substantial re-raise with kings. Limper calls, and the original raiser folds. The flop is a very connected, very draw-heavy flop, and I lead pretty strong, and I'm called. And on the turn, the flush gets there. It's now a top pair pairs the board, and I'm pretty much ahead of nothing at this point. I'm dead to a flush. I'm dead to top pair. Um, I can't think of a single hand, a single legitimate hand that I beat with my kings. So I check, and he essentially puts me all in. So I think it's a fold. I mean, if I could think of a single hand I could beat here other than air, then I could certainly call or shove. But the queen of hearts was just absolutely the worst, the worst card in the whole deck. So um, so we were just in some we were in some tough spots. I think I think we made correct calls on a lot of the hands and just got beat. So so that's kind of an introduction to the low variance style. We didn't really catch any cards, and for the most part, oh, there's one more hand that I want to show. That's this ace queen hand where we re-raise and then isolated. So there's a raise from this solid player, or a player that I consider a pretty solid player. He raises under the gun. I 3-bet him. Now, my image in his eyes is pretty solid because I haven't gotten out of line at this table. And the short stack goes all in, and the original raiser calls. So when he calls, I'm putting him on either a. When he calls, I'm putting him on like a pocket pair. A pocket pair like, let me think, maybe tens and lower. The flop is a very small. It's a very safe flop. It's a 9 and pocket 2 is about as good of a flop as I could hope if I had an overpair. He checks, and I I considered the fact that he could have something like aces or kings and is just trapping me pre-flop, but I think he would have re-raised to isolate. So it's certainly part of his range. Aces and kings are certainly part of his range, but I think more often than not, the vast majority of his range is just a pocket pair looking to set mine against me. So I bet to isolate against the short stack, and there's just plenty of dead money in the pot to make this a profitable bet. And he folds, and then I'm up against the short stack, and I get my I avoid a 10 and I hold. Now, if this guy shoved over my bet, then I think it's an easy fold. Then I have to assume that he was trapping me with a big with a big pocket pair, and he knows that I'm gonna get to see his hand because this guy's all in. So either way, whoever bets on the flop, the other person's gonna see their hand. So it's not like he's gonna be able, like, yeah, he could bluff me off this pot, but I think the fact that his hand is gonna be shown makes him play a little bit more cautiously. So the cards didn't really fall our way this session, but in the long run, this is going to be a very profitable style for 25 no limit. So I hope you got something out of the video, and this is Verneer for Card Runners.